Hello, welcome to today's Back to the City. I'm Simon Calder, and today, with it being October, I'm very excited to be joined by Amanda Standalone.
Hello, I
Uh,
don't know where I'm looking.
you can look. You can
Oh,
look
there we go.
anyway. Hello,
Awesome.
hello,
Any which
everyone.
way. All right,
Here,
good deal.
here we are. And the reason why I'm excited to have you here this month in particular is because you have an appropriately October-esque record that you're putting out this month.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about it?
So the album is titled You're Still Here, and it is the culmination of many years, which it shouldn't have been, but I've had quite a few setbacks. But years of me compiling interviews with people about real life paranormal experiences. And then I've been writing songs that kind of basically the songs are about the interviews, but there's a lot of mixing and matching as well. So yeah, so like the interviews I did are kind of chopped up and kind of rearranged, like a composition style thing, and they're both like intros and outros, but they're also interspersed within the songs as well.
Yes, and I love how that's done. Momentarily, we'll take a dive into the song "You're Still Here" and recognize the kind of how that tapestry, how that interweaving is working. I think it's done especially well with that song. But before we do, let's highlight the record releases
Yes,
that are coming
multiple.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first of which is on the 14th of
Yes.
October.
And yeah, so I'm from, I live in Crosby, Minnesota. And so I'm doing a couple of releases that are just going to be me selling like the actual physical product. So that's on the 14th, and that's at the James Cullen Room, which is behind a place called Yasher Kombucha. But it's a new venue in the area, and it's like a listening room style thing, so I think it would be very fitting.
Very nice.
And then the 15th is at New York Mills, Minnesota, and that is the New York Mills Cultural Center. And that is, yeah, a really beautiful space as well. I really love that place. They've been really, really kind to me in the past. So it's been, yeah, I was like, I want to do some stuff like in the local area where I live. And then after that, on the 21st, that's when I'll release it digitally, and then also have a CD release party at the 331 Club over here in Northeast Minneapolis.
Who will be playing with you?
I do have like other musicians joining me. So far, the man who produced it, Mr. Matt Patrick, who's awesome,
Yes.
he's going to play some tunes with me. Dan Garter, he was formerly in the Royal Family Singers, he's going to be joining me, and then I'm working on some string players as well.
Yeah. Is there some cello? Is there cello?
In the recording,
record,
yes, there's
yeah.
cello, and then there's pedal steel and bass, and so yeah, we're still working on getting all those musicians. But man, it's been a little tough haul. So
Let's zoom in on the title track because that is one that has cello, as just
Yes.
referenced. Yeah. And
oh yeah, viola as well.
and viola. Yes, exactly. Yes.
The interview portion is, I think it's a combination. I'm trying to remember. My friend, a woman named Seon, and that was one of the first interviews I did. And it's kind of about like a grandma's house situation, and she tells a story about after her grandma died, and an experience she had, kind of, yeah, where her grandma came back.
Grandma Anne. Yeah. Yeah, I love how that is integrated. I also love how your guitar comes in at the moment in the interview, where what's her name?
Seon,
Seon.
yeah.
Where Seon is saying, "A spirit stays where they love it the most."
Yes.
I think that's just such a perfect timing for that kind of haunting guitar to enter, kind of evoking the presence of Grandma Anne.
Yeah.
Is that intentional?
That is kind of intentional. What's interesting about that line is that when I've done like other interviews, people repeat that.
So how many interviews did you conduct, and how did you select the interviews?
With Sion, it was because of it's 100% because of her voice. It's like so comforting to me.
Yes.
Like during the pandemic, I found out like that podcasts were really like I lived very alone. I was out in the middle of nowhere, and podcasts were like super comforting just to have like the human voice with me.
Yes.
And yeah, I just I think if you listen to people's voices, like not like people are talking, but like musically, it's really cool. It seems poetic, and that was why the way she phrases everything and the way she speaks, I love her voice, and so that was that one. Other things were just because I found people that did interesting stuff with paranormal things. Although, like, for instance, like there's one called Grandpa's Grave, and that's about like people dowsing for human remains, and so and that was actually by chance that I was sitting around a table with my dad and one of his best friends, and then another cousin of his, and we were sitting around the table, and we all heard a voice. And so that's how I found him, because we started talking about this stuff, and then he was like, we do this stuff in rural cemeteries where we go and douse, but it's like he doesn't think of it as paranormal, which is, I was like, but you can't explain it, so that was why I chose him to interview, is because I was like, that is fascinating, and he's a genealogist and he does all this stuff. So
did he clarify what he meant by not paranormal?
I think he's just a practical person, and so he doesn't want to use that word, maybe.
Right.
Like that's kind of more it, but he used the word energy. He's like, and like that's kind of what's interesting about how this unraveled, because at first I was like, I put kind of just a call out to at one point, and I was like, anybody have these stories? And like I was expecting like Sasquatch and like aliens or like something like that. For some reason I don't know why I was expecting that, but and it really took a turn towards more like how do I say it, like ancestors and people, like, and things like that, and like those connections, and how people are comforted, I think, by the idea of spirits and things like that.
So there was more of a human connection, or human spirit connection,
definitely
components that
Yeah,
you
and
weren't necessarily expecting.
I was not expecting that.
So what was your initial idea then? How did you when you realized, okay, I'm going to integrate some interviews into this record, they'll be to do with the paranormal. What was the starting point? And then how did you then get to the point of You're Still Here, a Ghost Stories album?
That's a tough one. Ellen Stanley has heard about this idea for like 4 years, and I kept telling her about it, and I was like, I want to do this thing, and she's like, well, do it, and I kept on. I'm a procrastinator. Anyway,
Thank you, Ellen, for the encouragement.
She kept on telling me, so she kept on urging me. She's like, just do it, and I was like, so fine. And then I actually think that first interview was with my dad's best friend. That was the first one I did, and I think that was just by kind of happenstance, because I was like, you're like hanging out in cemeteries and like walking, and I'm like, that's fascinating to me. And then like I just kind of from there, I guess I'm just curious about that stuff, and so I just kept going with it. And I have a lot of friends who are into like witchy stuff and things like that, so I was like, I like to explore those things, and I think it's just that's where the thing kind of snowballed, I guess. And then the actual like doing the work, wow, that's been a lot of work. Uh, how did that happen? I mean, I just started doing it. I have a little Zoom recorder. I used to do a lot of stuff with like attempting to do kind of musicology stuff when I was younger. So I have a lot of that equipment and things like that. So this isn't the first time I've like interviewed people, and I just like stories and stuff, and so that's where that came from. And I guess the title track part of it, that song in particular, I mean, it's like it was inspired by the interview itself, but then it's just really about my grandma's house in a lot of ways too.
Yes. Yes.
So I just used those little snippets and things that I like found in the interviews that I liked, and then kind of spun off from that. And there's a lot of my own experience in it. Obviously, you can't really separate yourself from that when you're writing songs. But yeah, I was actually talking to a friend of mine about she was like, how did you end up coming up with? I'm like, because when I was younger, I think a lot of my songs were about my own experiences traveling and doing all this stuff, and I guess my life got kind of boring, and I think people's lives get kind of boring when you get older, so it's not as exciting. It's like you're going to work and you're doing all this stuff, and I mean, I just got kind of, I wasn't inspired. I had like a lot of writer's block for a really long time. And I was like, I don't know how to get myself out of this. And I'm like, well, if I don't have my own stories, maybe I can find them otherwise, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think that was the real kicker, you know?
Yeah, and then you stumbled upon all of this intimacy and focus on, like, again, on connection.
Yeah,
That was
on
kind of unexpected.
a
through-
lot of
through these
familial
stories.
connection. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And that comes true in the title track and the story that's incorporated in the title track. The paranormal event. One of the paranormal events is like a shaking bed.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
Uh,
is the so she lived in an old farmhouse. Originally, I think I'm pretty sure, but it's in the middle of Minnesota, and it was like a 250-year-old farmhouse that I think her great grandparents built, and like all this. And then she goes on to talk about how she had this experience where her bed would rock back and forth, and it made no sense to her, and then her parents moved, but that bed came with, and then after her grandmother died, she went up to sleep there, and then the bed started rocking back and forth, and then she said, and I thanked my grandma Ann for rocking me to sleep.
Yes, absolutely. And then that's the last time it happened.
Yeah, she's like, it's never happened again. That's what she says.
Yeah. So that's such an interesting journey. Such an interesting journey within that story, where this disarming thing is happening, and it's inexplicable, but then it turns out to be loving. There's this nurturing presence.
And that's kind of what I've gotten from a lot of, and I interviewed my friend Liz she's in the band Red Eye Ruby. Anyway,
Yeah.
I interviewed her, and she told another story, and she says I don't think you've heard that one, but in the intro, she's like, and then there's the trope of the great American horror story where spirits are bad and everything's bad, but like that's just generally not the case, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of it, I think, is just there's something comforting about it, and
Yes.
I guess I've had a few experiences that were like that, and I've had other ones too, but generally speaking, I do feel like it's like people are searching for something to connect them to people that are gone.
Yes. Yeah. There's something comforting about it in that moment where it seems like in the title track story, there's this kind of spirit that is yearning for connection, and then suddenly, like the human and her and Grandma Ann, it's felt like the thing that there's that we're yearning for is felt, and felt to be real and felt to be related to love, and connection, and then that's the moment where suddenly we're in the song, where like the lyrics come in. Could you expand a bit more on if there were other moments like that in the interviews, how that kind of how that affected the songwriting, this recurring hitting upon connection, how that affected the songwriting?
Oh, how that in other interviews. Oh yeah, there is actually other portions of the. So that song also goes. There is portions of it with my dad's friend Dave, who does the dowsing.
He's in there too.
He's in there too, yes.
Yeah.
And there's the snippets that I found with him. Like I remember, I think he said, "We've all had our spot on this earth. We should never forget those people." And yeah, so he's just into the idea that we count.
Everyone counts.
Everybody counts,
Yes.
and everybody has a story, and that's another thing he said in like the larger interview. He's like, everybody's got a story, and like I was like, it's kind of like have a library, and he's like, some books are really long and some books are really short, but we've all had our place on this earth,
Well,
and I think that's really cool.
Absolutely, me too. Well, an interesting character, because he's the one who's kind of reluctant to use the word paranormal.
Yeah,
yeah.
but because it's really for him, I think about that, like that real. There's a connection to those things, but I don't think he thinks of it as out of the ordinary.
For him, it seems like it's about honoring
Yes.
lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
So another expanding on that interview. So his cousin does this thing in rural cemeteries because he says that a lot of grave markers have been knocked over or like not there anymore, and so he says like rural cemeteries are filling up, and so his cousin goes out and she douses when people request a plot, and then she finds out if somebody's already there, because a lot of times they'll find, and you don't want to stack people on top of each other. So that was one thing he was talking about, where if she finds somebody and they probe and stuff, then she goes back and she'll mark them for the family. And I think that's really like, that's the other thing, is just like the aftermath. People in death are important as well. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're part of the story.
Yes.
And I think that's really cool that they do that. You know what I mean? It's just it creates there's a they have it make I think everybody creates their own meaning with this kind of stuff, but it's just that some people, they love history, they like the past and how things have developed, and it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, I love the focus on respect there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Being in right relationship.
Yeah, that was actually the beginning of that interview. That interview is fascinating. Yeah, that's a good one. But he talks about how they used to go decorate graves on Memorial Day. That's the beginning of it, and he repeats that. He's like, people who go into cemeteries and desecrate those places, and he's like, those are sacred places. He says that over and over again as well, which I think people should hear that.
Yeah. So there's this thread throughout of respect and honor, being in right relationship, connection, and you were talking about particularly with that individual, your dad's best friend, the kind of love of history, and that's coming through a little in your lyrics. So I could drive these back roads blind, Minnesota pines, travel back in time.
Absolutely.
And I think the cello comes in just after that.
That cello. It's very simple, but it's like, it makes it really.
So could you expand a bit more on the relationship between kind of lyrics and vocals like that So there it's kind of narrating the relationship with place, a place that has been lived in. Just once the shadow's there, clothes are swinging on the line, gardens doing fine, sage, rosemary, and thyme, and I can feel you. Then there's the that's such an interesting. So we've kind of zoomed in on the heart of the song there, really, and the journey that we take with those, following those vocals, starts off with like having a very clear sense of place. I know this place that's been lived in. Then the cello comes in. Just like the guitar came in the first place, and we feel the presence. It feels very. The song feels very kind of lived in with the strings, and then we have the details, the signs of people, clothes on the line, and then all of a sudden, like the big shift, and I can feel you. Can you reflect a bit on either on just the journey that we've just taken in that bit of the song, or like how that chorus, how it expands, how it relates to
The place and everything.
the place and everything?
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I guess in my mind, like, I've always felt like really drawn to play, to place, like the way they make you feel, like, or like the weird memories things trigger, or and a spirit stays where they loved it the most, if you want to put that in there. I think that's definitely like the biggest part of that. Like I feel like if you live on, if somebody lives on land, there's always something of them that's there. That doesn't go away, especially for people who experience that person there. Like you can, you can't take them out of that space. They're like all of the little things, the house, like somebody built that house and their hands are in it, and
And there are chairs still in the yards.
rusted out cars,
Yeah.
and the pantry's full of mason jars.
Chairs. Yeah. And we can still smell the perfume from the back room.
Weaving rags to rugs on a loom. My grandma was a weaver, and so I just remember she would sing, and she spoke Finn, and she would just sit back there and sing like old, and all you heard. But maybe I should have put that. It goes, the sound of the loom was like cha-chunked, cha-chunked, and like I would be out there all summer with her, not all summer, but a lot of the summer. My parents would drop me off, and like she was a really old school lady, and I mean pantry full of mason jars is correct, like lots of canning, lots of, you know what I mean. And it's just kind of, I think it just like harkens back to that old world stuff, maybe. That's where a lot of that comes from. I feel like I got to experience like a really old world even in this one, you know what I mean, when I was there. And I think that's I feel very grateful for that I got to see like that lifestyle, where people are making their own stuff and growing their own food and all those things. And I think that's important to continue, even just those ideas. And like, I guess that's like, I can feel you even like, how do I say that? The things I learned from you are the things that that remind you of the things that you learned from the people that you grew up with or whatever.
Yes.
The things you carry those. And I think that's kind of what it's about. It's just that, like, I'm here in this place, and like, I can just see, like, I can remember these things that are, like ground you a little bit, or just feel really connected to it. And that's, I think places can do that to you sometimes. And I don't know if that's ghostly though, necessarily. I don't think it's paranormal necessarily either, but you know what I mean? But it does have that, sometimes it feels like it, you know what I mean? You can just feel that they're there with you almost.
Absolutely, yeah. So there is it's quite subtle, isn't it? That although I can see you in the walls, I can hear your voice. It does kind of build up to that.
In my ears, see your face in these mirrors. I guess it's just more about memory in that, in
Yeah,
some sense.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I
and
feel like your dad's friend could happily listen to it.
yeah,
And particularly this song, it's someone who's uh, not into or doesn't believe in the paranormal can still appreciate the connection. And how interesting that you were led back to these memories, these very specific memories, and so many things, the mason jars and so on, related to your grandmother, through after having an interview where you're kind of seeking the paranormal to begin with.
and then I'm
And
talking
then,
about mason jars.
yeah. And then you encounter in the interview the focus on intimate connection between Grandma Anne and your interview subject. And then we end up with such a sense of place, and I can feel you and connection in the songs too. Would you say, so this, one final detail about this song, my favorite moment, right before we get caught up in a kind of coliseum of strings, you have like a coliseum of spirit coming to you.
Behind you.
Behind you.
You have a coliseum of spirit behind you.
Okay, and that in the tapestry of the song, right before this, we're kind of swept up in this coliseum. I feel like there's this coliseum of all the string instruments. What was the genesis of that statement? And then could you just say a little bit about the juxtaposition of it at that moment?
That actually, that part of the interview, I believe she's talking about. She says that she has gone to like many spirits and mediums and stuff, and then she's like, and they've just told me that I have a coliseum of spirit behind me, and she said that she's like, I don't know what that is. I don't know why people, and she's, it's one of those I don't know moments. There's a lot of those throughout the whole thing too, because I mean, a lot of things that's the unanswered part, But I think in that to put that there in the song, I think it's just about feeling like that's probably the most paranormal thing in the whole thing. Yeah, definitely. I think that's about knowing that there's like spirit guides, I guess. There's people that help you in this world, even though if you don't believe in it, whatever, that doesn't matter to me. That's actually one thing I'd like to say about the whole thing. It doesn't matter to me if people believe in the stories, if they're real or not. I think it's more about what it means to each individual person, and if it helps you.
Yeah.
And I think that it helps people to feel those things and like to believe in those things, and that one in particular, it's like it's comforting to think that people who have passed before you are helping you along your way.